when we talked about this in our preview interview, you brought up the fact that as a teenager, Vietnam had started taking place, but it wasn't anything. So it wasn't talked about. You didn't know where it was. Who cared? So bring me from the teenage years of you dropping off that shotgun, screwing around shooting rabbits, to the draft, because.
Well, when I was,
and I'll let you lead up to it, but I want to tell people what the draft really was when you get there.
And in the classroom, I mentioned this because during that time period, there was 3 television stations: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And if you watch television at 6 o'clock in the evenings, it was the news. That's the only thing that was on. Walter Cronkite and the whole smeal. And the only thing on the 6 o'clock news was at that time Vietnam. And when I was a teenager and when I was in high school and stuff, I didn't watch the news, and I didn't read the newspaper unless I was looking at the sports page. And so even though Vietnam, while I was in high school, was very heavy, 65, 66, it was really getting going then.
That's when it kind of started.
That's when it really got to the recognition that hey, we got a big problem here. And I never paid any attention to it or knew what was going on really, because I didn't watch it. But I knew I was getting ready to be on this draft list. And even though I knew I was going to get drafted if I didn't go to college out of high school and all that kind of stuff, Vietnam still never crossed my mind.
So, I'm gonna, in terms of the draft, there's a few parts to the draft, guys. You have the fact that teenagers know they're about to be brought up. You turn 18, you go to college, or you may go to Vietnam. But it really came down to the lottery. Mm-hmm. And so the lottery, guys, was literally what it sounds like. There's these bunch of stuffy politician guys. Were they politicians? Who literally spin one of those balls around, and there were 365 of them in there.
It's like bingo.
Yeah, and you didn't want your number called
yeah.
in this bingo. They pulled all 365 of those balls in order, mm-hmm. and they were days of the year. February 29th went with 28th. That was the rule. Mm-hmm. And they laid out all 365. So if your birthday was June 23rd,
right.
and they picked that one first. I think February 17th was picked first.
It was something in February, yeah.
Yeah, and because one of my students had that birthday, and I did the fake draft, and when he heard his number, it was one of those where, he's like, oh, shit. As a teacher, you're like, mm-hmm. He swore on my class, but I'm going to let him have that one. I'm going to let him have that one. So, yeah, they pull all 365, and then they do an additional lottery of 26 letters.
Yeah.
And that's where, so if you're June 23rd, and they pull letter D,
that's me.
You're going to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Going to Vietnam.
And I didn't know where my birth date sat on the list.
Never even looked.
Never even looked. Wasn't even concerned about it.
Yeah, because we all, posterity, those of us who of course weren't alive, mm-hmm. and only hear this stuff on the TV, you think that every single person watched this going, oh no, I'm going to go die.
And some did, because some, once it got close to their number, they knew I'm a month away from being drafted and so forth and so on, they go down on the list. Because you knew damn well if you were drafted in Vietnam, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I figured it out later and hearing guys talk afterwards. If you got drafted and you was going to either the Marine Corps or the Army. That was the major combat. Infantry. That's what they needed in Vietnam. So if you knew if you're going to get drafted, your ass is going to end up in the Army and in the infantry, and 6 months later you're going to be in Vietnam. Exactly. So when they knew their number was coming close, they'd go down on the list. They enlisted in the Air Force, the Navy, or whatever. That kept them out of the jungle of Vietnam. So.
You're my third Vietnam vet interview, and the first two did exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
They went and volunteered before because they knew they'd have a better chance of not being just shipped off into the infantry
out in the jungle.
That's interesting.
And I never realized that, or I might have done the same damn thing. But I says, no, hell, they're never going to get me. And then you get your pre-induction notice.
Yeah, what did you think when you got the letter?
Well, first you get a pre-induction notice. That's where you go down and you take your physical, and then that's when they really classify you 1A, 2A, 4F, whatever it's going to be based on your physical conditioning. And to me, even that was no big thing. Like I mentioned to you when we was talking, you had to go down, I think it was on Twig Street in Tampa. And that's where the bus left, whereas you went to Coral Gables for your pre-induction.
Yeah, tell us the story of the bus. So, and don't leave anything out. This was great. This is a great story.
You had to be at this building. I forget what kind of a building. Well, obviously a selective service building of some kind. And you got on the bus there at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to Coral Gables. You was there all day. You got back home probably about midnight, I think it was that night. But anyway, on the day I was supposed to be down there, I typically, you know, teenager, overslept and didn't give a damn whether I got down there or not, to tell you the truth. So I go staggering in there about 8:30 in the morning, and this big black lady was working the desk there, and she says, "Can I help you, young man?" I says, "Well, not unless you can bring that bus back." And she didn't think that was funny at all. So she commenced to calling me every low-life son of a bitch in the book. And if I ever thought this was a joke or that she could bring that damn bus back, I need to get my ass someplace outside of where I was at. So anyway, after about 30 minutes of her cussing me, she says, "Young man, your ass will be here at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning." Or she says, "You might as well commit suicide." And I thought, damn, this lady's serious. But anyway, 7 o'clock, I was there about 6:30 the next morning, and did the pre-induction physical. Nothing's wrong with me, you know, you're classified 1A. And I thought, okay, that's the end of it. And, you know, I think it was 3-4 months later, you get your
Draft notice.
Uncle Sam wants you, you know. So that's
So then bring us up. What was boot camp like and training?
Grew up in Florida, 18 years old. I saw snow one time. We had a little snow flurry in 1957, I think it was. So that was my experience with snow.
By the way, that's the snow that you only see if, like, you're wearing black.
Exactly.
You're like, and then it leaves.
And so I get drafted in November, October 26th, actually. And by the time I go through the reception station, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky reception station. And where did they send a Florida boy for basic training in the wintertime? Fort Carson, Colorado. I thought I'd died and gone to hell. I didn't know the world got that cold. So I went through basic training November, December, and January in Fort Carson, Colorado. And that was a culture shock.
Yeah, is it what the movies portray, like Full Metal Jacket? You got some guy yelling at you? Because, by the way, he becomes that guy later on. I'm going to break the ice here, but he's the guy from Full Metal Jacket yelling in your face.
At Fort Carson, you had the old 2-story wooden barracks, and my bunk was on the 2nd story. And I know one time, and outside at the end of the barracks, there's a fire escape, a little platform where you go out the back door and down the stairs. And we had Foot Locker inspections. And he didn't catch a jelly donut in my Foot Locker like you see in the Full Metal Jacket, but he didn't like the looks of my Foot Locker. So I can remember and then we didn't actually have drill sergeants. They were cadre, and most of them were Vietnam returnees, E5s and E6s, you know, that just come back.
So they already seen some stuff.
Right, and but that was our drill sergeant. We didn't have a per se drill sergeant with a round hat like a lot of the units or a lot of the posts had at that time. But he didn't like my Foot Locker, and I can remember him. My barrack bunk was 1 or 2 from the end of the building. He just picked it up, walked over to the fire escape, and threw it up from the 2nd story. And he says, "Now your Foot Locker's a fucking mess." And I'm thinking, no shit.
How do you not laugh? I
mean, it's hard.
I keep thinking of that scene from Full Metal Jacket. Have you seen it where he's like,
oh, yeah.
"Who the f said that?"
Oh yeah. And so.
I could not laugh. I would probably just break out, and then of course he's over in your face.
So when he says your Foot Locker is now a real fucking mess, I says, "Well, no shit, you just threw it off the 2nd floor balcony." And he says, "I suggest you might take your ass down that fire escape and get that thing in order." So I'm out there in the dirt putting my Foot Locker back together. But and a lot of the things that you see, like in the movies, Full Metal Jacket, and anyone where it depicts basic training. Yeah, it's very, very similar. Very similar. Of course, that was Marine Corps, and some people say Marines are a little bit more ignorant anyway. But
well, they always describe boot camp as this breakdown, build back up.
Exactly.
They take the civilian out, which is all of your menial worry about today it's probably worrying about your cell phone, you know, worrying about your girlfriend back home. Forget all of it, and then we'll bring you back.
Then we didn't have the cell phone, we didn't have the video games and all that. But it's
they got to break that kid with the shotgun.
Yeah, taking away the civilian, you know, life, and you are now military.
You're not shooting rabbits anymore.
And you're not shooting rabbits out in the orange groves.